Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today we have the brand new Tier 9 Premium American Battleship, the Indiana.
We named the dog Indiana.
Import to review for you guys today. This ship is something alright from the stats that we saw early on in its announcement dev blog. Now, there have been some interesting developments since then, especially the price of this thing. But she is the third South Dakota class battleship in game. That's the same class as the Alabama and the Massachusetts, both of those you can visit in real life. Sadly, the Indiana you cannot, but it's always cool seeing real, still historical ships get added to this game. Now, the Indiana is quite different from her sisters, especially in her stats and her playstyle. We'll get into all that and more in this video. So, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and give an absolutely massive shout out to the channel's Patreon supporters, who I can tell you, without their help, this review would most certainly not be possible. I am not a CC, so I do not get access to these ships for free in order to review them for you guys. We have to pick them up using the generous donations that the Patreon supporters give to the channel, or of course with the ad revenue that the channel generates. And without these guys, this review would 100% not be happening. So massive thank you to those guys whose names should have just popped up on screen. If you wish to support the channel, supporting it via the Patreon, which there's a link to that in the description down below, check that out, and that is where you can be oh so generous and join those guys. So again, massive thank you to those guys. Without you guys, what I do would not be possible. So the Indiana, let's go ahead and take a look at her stats, her features, and of course we're going to run through her stats and stuff here in port, slap a commander build on her, then hop into the game for a gameplay review section. So, the Indiana. We are in the new port that is celebrating the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Navy. So it is one of those, well, you're actually inside a house for a good chunk of it. Let's see, where do we zip back off to? Oh, over here. So hold on. I want to see if I can see this window from over there. Oh, yeah. Okay, it's that right there. This little bungalow right here, huh? But anyway, so let's go ahead and take a look at the Indiana. First off, how much is this thing? Way too much. Way too much. So if you do want to pick her up, there's two options to picking her up right now. The first one is once you get past the Baldur's Gate characters. I know it's not really Baldur's Gate, but I mean, that you know who that looks like. So there is a sequential bundle where you can buy these containers that could potentially drop the Indiana. She has a 2% drop rate in the second slot on these containers, which eventually you're either going to get her in these containers or you are going to be able to purchase her for the price of 1 credit after dropping 50,000 doubloons on the bundle. That's $198 worth of doubloons. So for $200 you could potentially, well, not for $200, for up to $200, you could potentially gamble to get her, where at the end you will get her for about $198 worth of doubloons. Again, you could get lucky and get her on the fourth bundle here, and each of these, you do get more containers per bundle, but yeah, so gamble. You got to gamble to get her in that way, or you can buy her outright, and say it with me, ladies and gentlemen, an Admiral bundle for $179.
Hello, I like money.
So this is the slightly cheaper way to potentially get her. This is a stupid amount of money to cough over for a tier 9 premium ship. Yes, I did it because YouTube, but this is just way too much, guys. The ship will return eventually in a normal fashion. I wouldn't really worry about coughing up this much money to get her right away. Again, you could get lucky in these bundles, but that's gambling. So regardless of what I say today, wait to pick her up. I know it's exciting and stuff, but it's a bunch of pixels. It's not worth that much. But anyway, going back to what I was talking about with that bundle, you do get the very cool U.S. Navy 250 anniversary camo for the Indiana, which is downright glorious. Look at them eagles. It's like, this looks really good. I do like it. I'm not going to run it because I don't like running these event camos on these ships. I just prefer just the historical camos. But it is beautiful. I will give them that. They absolutely crushed it with this camo. Look at the stripes there. Beautiful. Beautifully well done. So kudos to the art department for that. All the gold accents. That's so nice. So nice. So nice. But yeah, I prefer just the normal historical camo. Alright, for the economy of the ship. This is a tier 9 premium ship, so it does have the best premium economy in the game. If you guys don't know, the premium ships have a baked-in premium economy, and then they have, this bonus package on top of it. So the bonus package gives you a 10% buff to the credits, 100% buff to the various XPs. We will be running the green economic bonuses on the Indiana, so any of the results you see in the background were with the green economic bonuses. Alright, for the armor, well, it is a South Dakota 32mm bow, 38mm plating, 38mm torpedo protection, 38mm upper plating, 32mm stern, 32mm stern deck, 32mm bow deck, 38mm center deck. And then the Citadel is, nice and below the waterline, so you're not citadeling it. Just like, again, the Alabama and the Massachusetts, unless, we got some extreme plunging fire going on at range. Alright, and the main attraction, these guns. These 406mm guns have a 27-second reload time, which is absurdly short for a battleship to have. Like 9 16-inch guns with the American AP. That's pretty dang good. A 40-second 180 time, 240 meter maximum dispersion with a maximum range of 18.8 kilometers. The HE does a maximum damage of 5,700 with a 36% fire chance. It does pen 68 millimeters of armor. 803 meters a second is how fast those shells are coming out of the guns. Now, the AP is obviously very good, 13,100 maximum damage, but because these guns are the 45 caliber guns and not the 50 caliber guns that you find on the Iowa, the shells do kind of just roll out of the tubes going 701 meters a second. Add in the fact that, well, you get, of course, the Mark 8 shell drag, which basically means there's parachutes attached to the shells. Firing at range is not going to be the Indiana's thing. Not like it has much range anyway with 18.8 kilometers. You do get 2 attacking flights of the depth charge planes. That's pretty standard. A defense is 82. You get 52 of the 20mm Oerlikons. You get 12 of the quad-mounted 40mm Bofors. And then the 127mm guns are dual purpose. And they are not secondaries. It's not a secondary ship. 6-second reload time, 7-kilometer range. Yeah, you're not really making much happen with that. It's not a Massachusetts. Maneuverability, she does travel at 27.5 knots base. She does have the improved acceleration that the Vermont has, I do believe. So she gets up and goes pretty dang well to make up for that lack of speed. And these ships do tend to be pretty maneuverable because they are pretty short battleships, unlike the Iowa. So you have a 710 meter turning circle there compared to the Missouri's, which is, 990. Yeah. Much better than the Missouri. 50.3 second rudder shift time. What is let's pull up the Massachusetts here if we can. It's, so slightly better rudder shift than the Massachusetts. Just double checking the armor here. 32, 30. Oh, it's actually got better armor on the sides than the Mass. That's nice. So you get 38mm plating on the belt and on the upper belt, when the Masters have 32. I suspect the Alabama's probably that same way as well, huh? Yeah. Oh, that's very nice then. That's a big middle finger to a lot of HE at that tier, and giant middle finger to those 18-inch guns and 20-inch guns, because they cannot overmatch that. So that's actually very nice. I was thinking that seemed a little thick for the South Dakota. Okay, all right, we're cooking, boys. Concealment, 15.3 kilometer concealment, and I believe with the build, you're gonna get this down like really, really low. I think 12, maybe even in the 11s, which is kind of crazy. All right. For the equipment, you do get spotter or fighter. We're gonna keep spotter on there. Hydra cruiser search with a 5 kilometer range and a 100-second runtime, and the improved American battleship here. Let me double check that here real quick. Yeah, 80-second cooldown, 28-second action time, 427 HP per second. Massachusetts, come back. I probably went right on over it. Oh, it has a better heal than the Massachusetts actually. That's really nice. All right. But it does have, yeah, a longer cooldown time though. So keep in mind, this is with the, oh, let me slap that on there. Does that bump it up a little bit? 417. Keep in mind, I didn't have that on the, Indiana as well. So already, yeah. We're cooking. We are cooking here, boys and girls. So better base heal than the Mass, but again, longer cooldown time than the Massachusetts as well. All right, so that is the Indiana. We're gonna go ahead and throw a commander module build on her, and then we'll take her out into battle and see how she does. What I forgot to mention was her hit points. She does have 67,950 hit points now with the flag on and a 49% torpedo damage reduction. That's pretty dang good. All right, now talking about her module build. So she's a tier 9, which is very cool when it comes to American battleships. We'll get to that in a second. Alright, so naturally we took main armaments mod 1 because, well, this ship's all about the main battery guns, and we want those main battery guns to, well, be around for as long as possible, and be in action for as long as possible, too. So this reduces the chance of them being knocked out by 20%, buffs their survivability by 50%, and reduces their repair time by 20% as well. Now, of course, they can't be knocked out anymore, so, yeah, but this still increases the recovery time, so the less time they're down, the better. And then, of course, we took Damage Con Mod 1 because fires suck, and there's going to be a lot of HE spam at high tiers, so of course we want to mitigate that as much as possible. So this reduces the chance of us catching on fire by 5% and reduces the chance of flooding by 3%. And then we took the Artillery Plotting Room Mod 1, which is the first of the unique American Plotting Room modules. This gives the main battery firing range a 16% buff to the range, and a 5% buff to the secondary battery range as well, and a 5% buff to the dispersion of the secondary battery shells. Since the ship does naturally have a very short main battery gun range, getting that pushed out a bit further is quite useful. And, you know, nothing else here was really overly useful. Maybe main battery mod 1, if that. Alright, then of course we took Damage Con Mod 2 because fires and floods suck, and this reduces the runtime of those fires and floods by 15%. That's the less time you're flooding, less time you're burning down, less time you're taking damage, and again, HE spam is the norm at higher tier, so that helps a lot with that. Then, of course, we took Concealment Systems Mod 1 for a 10% buff to the detectability range of the ship. That means you're stealthier and is easier to disengage when you need to because your ship is nice and stealthy. Given that this is essentially a tier 8 at tier 9, having the ability to disengage when you want to is a huge one. Then lastly, we took Artillery Plotting Room Mod 2, which gives us an 11% buff to the main battery gun dispersion, which is huge on a ship whose guns reload in 27 seconds. Now, you could have taken main battery mod 3 to get a 12% buff to the reload time and have like a 25-second reload. That very well may be an option, but still, I think having an 11% buff to the dispersion with the already fast reload is pretty dang good. Of course, I'm running Halsey on the Indiana. Took preventive maintenance to reduce the chance of the main guns and, you know, being knocked out again, same reasoning as we took the module, but this also increases the survivability of our AA guns and our secondary battery guns as well, so, you know, it keeps the AA intact that much longer. And then, of course, we took Grease the Gears, which on Halsey has an additional 5% buff to the rotation time of those guns, but yeah, you know, faster turning turrets is always a nice thing on battleships. Of course, we took Adrenaline Rush to get another advantage, because Adrenaline Rush works in the way that, well, if you take damage, you get a buff to the reload time of your armaments. So for every 1% of HP that you lose on the Indiana, you get a 0.2% buff to that reload time. So you're getting that 27-second reload down even faster. Then, of course, we took Basics of Survivability for an additional 15% buff to the restoration time of our modules, and another 15% buff to the extinguishing of fires and to flooding recovery. So again, less time that we're flooding and burning, less damage we're taking. Of course, less time that those guns are knocked out, the better. Then Emergency Repair Expert to give us an additional charge of our heal and a 10% buff to its run time. So we get another heal and we get more HP back because it runs for longer. great deal. And then, of course, Consummate Expert again for another 10% buff to our Consummate, for a total of a 20% buff to our Consummate. The sneakier we are, the better. The easier it is to disengage, the easier it is to sneak up on ships too. And finally, Fire Prevention Expert to reduce the number of fires on our ship from 4 to 3, meaning that we can only have at most 3 fires on this ship, and it reduces the chance of us catching fire by another 10%. So again, less fires, the better. So what does that do to the Indiana? Well, now we have, I already showed you 67,000 HP with the flag. The guns now have a maximum dispersion of 247 meters, but at 21.8 kilometers, because of course we took the range mod. So the buff is very much there. And anything else change here? No, I don't think so. The 180 time of the turrets. Did I forget? Where does that show at? There we go. 32 seconds now. That's nice and fast. More than enough for what we need to do with the ship. A defense, nothing should have changed there. Maneuverability now with the flag, we have a 28.9 knot top speed. So, about what you'd expect out of a South Dakota. And our Consummate's now down to 12.4 kilometers, which is just downright absurd for a battleship, for a Tier 9 battleship to have. So that is fantastic. Alright guys, I'm going to go ahead and take the Indiana out into battle. And I'll meet you guys there with a voiceover review of the Indiana. Alright guys, voiceover Sealord here, and whew, man, tonight was something, I'll tell you that. It was something for sure. The quality of matches, of course, recently hasn't been overly great with, of course, the resurgence of players that, they're coming off of 3, 4, 2-year breaks of the game, not really up to speed with all the new mechanics and the new, gimmick ships and all that jazz, so that's understandable, but it just felt especially rough tonight, y'all. Like, good lord, the games I had in the Indiana were rough. They were one-sided a whole lot of times, and yeah, on top of that, everyone wants to shoot the YouTuber in the shiny new ship. So we definitely had the Indiana put through her paces tonight. So I can confidently say I've got a pretty good feel for the ship after the sequence of events that transpired tonight. So the Indiana, how is she? Well, when a Tier 8 ship gets up tier to Tier 9, usually the biggest drawback when we're talking about Tier 8 battleships that get turbocharged to Tier 9 is their HP pool. Because sure, you can increase the thickness of their armor, give them a slightly better armor layout, which is what happened with the Indiana versus the Alabama or the Massachusetts. But usually the health stays around the same. Maybe sometimes they get a small bump in HP, usually not at all. And that is definitely the biggest drawback with the Indiana. Because, yeah, sure, you can bait shots into that 38mm upper belt or that 38mm torpedo blister. And, yeah, that is a great way to, negate damage coming from those larger caliber guns that are everywhere at high tier now, especially when we're talking about super ships. But at the end of the day, it's a Tier 9 battleship with 67,000 HP, and it's having to go up against, the airstrikes, the Colombo, the SAP spam, the HE spam, and all that jazz. And yeah, Colombo, when Colombo removes 20k of your HP and you're in a Tier 10 battleship with proper Tier 10 battleship HP, that's a problem. When it does the same to the Indiana, that's a third of your HP gone in a single salvo. So that definitely sucks. And I got to experience that quite a lot tonight, because what would normally happen is, for whatever reason, whatever fates decide my fate in this game, I would go to a flank and the friendly team would do one of two things. One, they would immediately just perish. Or two, they would just run away the second they saw a red pixel appear on the screen, which is, of course, quite infuriating, especially when you are in a battleship that only goes, base 27 knots, and, a little bit over that with a speed flag equipped, because, you're not really outrunning stuff in the Tier 9 matchmaking bracket, right? Because keep in mind, this thing's a Tier 9 ship, so it can see super ships. And obviously, most of the super ships, which is about every tier 9 and tier 10 battleship, can and will outrun and overtake the Indiana. Except for like the Vermont line, right? Needless to say anything about, of course, the cruisers and destroyers. You get overtaken even faster because when everyone is running away at full throttle, you were just the slowest thing there usually. So that also happened a lot too. However, well, that was definitely the roughest bit of the night with the Indiana. There are some very good things about the Indiana. That 27-second reload with the ability to take the Plotting Room Mod 2 module, you got a pretty nice set of guns that are putting out some pretty good damage every 27 seconds. And you do get an improved heal that can make up for some of the shortcomings when it comes to the Indiana's HP and then having to deal with all, of course, the nonsense that we have at higher tier nowadays. So that's pretty nice as well. And as I mentioned earlier, the 38mm plating on the side of the hull is very, very nice. That cannot be understated for sure. Along with the excellent 12.4 kilometer detection range with the full build, that is just downright good for a tier 9 battleship to have that level of stealth on it, regardless of, whatever else, right? So, on paper, you've got a stealthy, up-armored Alabama that can take the dispersion module with a 27-second reload at tier 9. And it looks great on paper. Also on paper, this thing was kind of billed as, a mid-range, more maneuverable Alabama. And I tried to play it like that, and, that just didn't work out in the high-tier meta. Because, of course, medium range means, you got to get in there. And with the guns that it does have, those Alabama guns, those 45 caliber guns, yeah, your ideal range is typically 17 kilometers down because of the air drag. Well, 17 kilometers by tier 10 standards isn't really all that mid-range. That's starting to get downright close by tier 10 standards. 2 more kilometers, 15 kilometers, that's starting to get in mid to close range. And, that's the effective limit of the Indiana's guns, really. So, what winds up happening, or what did wind up happening, is that, got too close, kept getting targeted for death by everyone on the enemy team, so gave up on that strategy pretty quickly. And then I just started to play it more like an Iowa at tier 9, right? Taking pot shots from longer range, using that, faster reload to kind of make up for the fact that I'm having to lead these ships by quite a bit from further out, and basically praying that eventually the game would devolve to the point to where I could actually get in there, use the maneuverability and really, start punching things in their faces. And eventually that did start to work, and the numbers started to add up, and I started to get a couple of decent games here and there. But again, with the situation I was running into with the teams, where everyone just, sprints away from the cap the second they see an enemy ship, it was pretty frustrating. And what I eventually really started to do is that I just swapped over to the HE at longer ranges, because the HE has much better ballistics than the AP, because the HE is just normal HE, really. It's not any super special HE, so it leaves the tubes at 801 meters a second. So I started to, spam HE at longer range at ships that, you typically couldn't really get good bites in at longer range with the AP anyway, and that started to work out pretty well, too. I mean, you do have a 27-second reload, so, yeah, might as well put it to work, spamming HE. So, start to lob HE at things that are way out there, and when they start to get into that 17-ish kilometer range, swap it over to the AP and start letting, the Mark 8 Super Heavy AP really put in the work with the Indiana, and that really started to work pretty well for me for the rest of the evening, and that's how I'd really recommend you play it, at least right now. Now, obviously, if we're in, a tier 9 game, you can probably stick with the AP and can probably be a little bit more aggressive if you have teams that don't just fold the second they see a single destroyer, enemy destroyer on their flank, right? I definitely have a good feel for the gunnery in this ship, that it's got something. It's got the juice, right? It's just that you got to be in the right situation for the juice to really get distributed to the enemy team, right? So you got to, have the stars align, have the planets align, have RNG be in your favor, and yeah, it will happen, but again, I didn't have too many of those matches tonight, just with how the teams were. What's especially frustrating about the team just abandoning the flank like that too, one of your biggest strengths you're no longer really able to use, which is your excellent concealment. Because when your destroyers just sprint out of there and just leave you behind to perish, Of course, the enemy destroyer is going to get to live inside of your detection range without really having to worry about anything, because your destroyers and cruisers have left you in the dust. So that's really annoying when, one of its biggest strengths does just get negated like that. Of course, CVs and stuff too. Well, CVs and submarines, of course, can negate it as well. Yeah. But again, if my team, I should say, just wouldn't abandon me like they did so much tonight, that wouldn't really happen. You wouldn't really have to worry about that, and you could, choose to engage and disengage at your will. So properly supported, this thing is tremendous. It's really good. However, is it worth the $180 asking price Wargaming is asking for it right now? No, it's not worth that much. This is a pretty good Tier 9 premium ship. It's not throw your grocery money for the month at the game good, right? Obviously, this thing will eventually come back as a normal premium, and you'll be able to buy it for the price of a Tier 9 premium ship, which, while yes, it's an epic ship or whatever, it will be a little bit more, but it's not going to be $180 more, right? So before we even get to the numeric rating, yeah, it's not worth the $180. But speaking of the numeric rating, what would I give the Indiana? Well, I will give the Indiana an 8 out of 10. It's a really, really good Tier 9 premium ship. When it comes back for sale normally, I would encourage you to pick one up. Again, not worth the $180. But the pros of the Indiana, of course, those 9 16-inch guns with a nice 27-second base reload time on those guns, and since it is a Tier 9, you can take the American Artillery Plotting Room Mod 2 module. You got the great concealment, the improved 38mm plating along the side of the hull. That is fantastic, once again, for throwing up a giant middle finger at all those 18-inch shells and above that you are going to run into in Tier 9 matchmaking. And it is, of course, super stealthy with a build that nice 12.4 kilometer concealment is indeed very nice. And she gets the improved acceleration parameters that you will find on the Vermont. So she's really great for, getting up and getting out of sticky situations when she needs to. And of course, you get the improved hill and the hydroacoustic search. Hydro's great at higher tier, helping you deal with the submarines and such. And when you have a battleship that's this maneuverable, if you do have hydro going, it shouldn't be really too much of a problem to dodge the torps. Again, we looked at the smaller turning circle radius and that of the Indiana. So again, with the improved Vermont acceleration, you can wiggle your way around those torpedoes a lot better than, of course, like an Iowa obviously can, and all that jazz. The cons, you are stuck with Tier 8 battleship HP at Tier 9. That's just, you're going to have to deal with that, right? You are in Tier 9 matchmaking, so you might get ripped into super ship gains for the entire evening, which is obviously that can and will suck for sure. The AA didn't really seem to be that impressive at all. I'm not sure. It definitely doesn't feel like it's got Alabama's AA for sure, but really like the fighter squadrons, the tactical squadron, I should say, the carpet bombers, the Dutch bombers and stuff, they didn't really have much of a problem getting through my AA, nor did the carriers that I was running into. So AA just feels mediocre, which, that's kind of expected, with the AA of today. So guys, that's my 2 cents on the Indiana. Let me know what you guys think about her in the comments down below. If you did manage to pick one up, let us know what are your experiences with her. Hope you guys enjoy. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.